Welcome back in. Clay Travis here. Hope all of you are having a fantastic Monday. Geico Outkick Studios. When a train hits a vehicle at a railway crossing, the results are often deadly. Be cautious at crossings, and if the signals are going, don't be tempted to try and sneak across the tracks. Even if you don't see a train, stop. Trains can't. Brought to you by the NHTSA. All right, so I told you that I had a theory, Joel. My theory is this. In the NFL, we know that the Packers and Aaron Rodgers are really good. We saw that the Bucs really just took it to them Sunday afternoon. Fantastic game, Brady versus Rodgers. Even Packer fans out there, none of them are sitting around like, oh my God, our season's over, we're no good. In fact, the Packers are still one of the top favorites to win the Super Bowl. That's because every week in the NFL, it's a cliche, but there's not that much of a difference between the best team in the NFL and the worst team in the grand scheme of things. In college football, there often is. And one way that takes place is when you have non-conference games and you start to break down everything in non-conference, typically one team is a lot better than the smaller school teams they might be playing against. We're doing away with those. ACC, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, Pac-12, it's all conference games. And so I'm starting to see wild outcomes, but I think it's because we're playing so many more conference games that much like you just saw with what happened with Green Bay getting run by Tampa Bay, there's more variety of outcome because there's no breathers, right? There's no opportunity for a team to be like, oh, we're playing against whatever it is, Southeast Missouri State. Sorry, Southeast Missouri State. We know that we're going to win this game barring a total collapse. Every game you have to get up because there's not that much that separates you. Do you buy that into being an issue here in college football this year?
Yeah, and I think that, I think it's almost every year too, though. So I don't know if it's specific to this year as much as it is
a lot of teams. I guess what I'm saying in the SEC, you basically have 3 games that you try to buy a win on, right? And now those don't exist, and it's like the intensity every single week is just got to be at a high level, the same way it is in the NFL. And I guess my theory is if it's not there, and one team just hits a lot better or performs a lot better, then it sort of gets exposed.
Well, I think that in every league you've got the 80-10-10 theory of group dynamics, and I'm sure you're somewhat familiar. I think you've got 10% that are great. I think you've got 10% that are awful, and then everybody else sits in the 80%, right?
Yeah.
And the group dynamics, the theory is in leadership, like in a team environment, or if you're out there and you've got a team of people in your work, basically the 80% are going to follow whoever the more influential 10% is. So you don't want, you call them the positive leaders in the 10% or the turds. You don't want to follow the turds, right? So, and I think that every league has that as well. And when you play games within the 80%, anybody can beat anybody on any given week. And I think we're seeing that. That's where, like, the Tennessee-Kentucky game was an 80% game. That could have gone either way. I don't think I would have been all that surprised if it would have gone big for Tennessee the other direction. I think that is to your point. Now, I would also say this, is that in college football, football is football regardless of level. But in college football, we tend to want definitive narratives every single game, right? Like in the NFL, we allow the season to take place, and
we allow teams to play multiple times too, right? Like you can play the same. Like in college football, we have this illusion that whatever happened once is going to happen every time they play. Whereas in the NFL, it's like, oh, we understand, right? Because you play 3 different divisional opponents twice, and the difference between those 2 games is often seismic, right? But in college football, it's like, whatever happened this one time is going to happen 100 consistent times.
Yeah, and we want those definitive narratives, right? And we want, the black and white. And to some degree, it's a problem with our playoff system and the way we crown a champion is because we want it to be subjectively definitive, and because of the way that football works, it just can't be. So it's an interesting paradigm.
All right. So last question for you. You have got the Ohio State game in the Big Ten this weekend for Fox. We've seen, obviously, we started off talking about this, the positive tests and how it's impacting the ability to play. And in particular, Nick Saban kind of hit at some of the flaws in this because he tests positive, and then he has 5 more tests that all prove that's negative, right? And so what do you think is going to happen with the Big Ten? How is their testing going to go? given the fact that they don't really have any bye weeks built in, I don't believe. How is that going to play out in the event some teams might not be able to play? What are you hearing about testing in the Big Ten?
Well, they outsmarted themselves right into a position where they're really behind the eight ball, right? Because they didn't do or try to do what the Big 12 or the SEC or the ACC was doing and have the opportunity for flexibility. Now they're in a position where they're going to be up against it. They're not going to have postponements. They're going to have cancellations because they don't have those bye weeks. And guess what? That's going to happen. I just want I'm preparing everybody right now. It's going to happen. And we should all just be prepared for it. Let's hope it's not some of the biggest games, but it's going to happen in the Big Ten. A couple of things is one, their self-applied policy where a player is an automatic 21-day basically out if he tests positive is going to do unthinkable damage to this schedule, right? And there was no reason to do this outside of the fact that they wanted to provide some extra level of, I don't even know what you call it, safety protocol that would, I think, back up the reasoning for why they canceled in the first place. See, I don't think they could have, in their mind politically, and just from a perception standpoint, I don't think that they could come back and be like, well, we're just doing the same thing that the other leagues are doing, because people would be like, why didn't you do this from the start? Why did we have the whole cancellation? So I feel like they felt pressure to do something above and beyond in terms of a procedure or protocol for their season, which is why you've got this player test positives. He's out 21 days. It's incredible, 21 days.
Yeah.
So what they're, and I quote on this now from Big Ten people, what they're terrified of are now these positive antigen tests that Saban have proved can be false positives. Because they don't feel like they're going to have the time to test out of it, in particular, if it's a player, maybe if it's a coach, but if a player tests positive, they just don't feel like they're going to have the ability to test them out of that protocol. They're going to go into the 21 days, the clock is going to start, and that's going to wreak havoc on their schedule.
And it's not only, and what's frustrating is, it's not only the teams that may be in the mix, right? It's a team that might not be in the mix at all, but they screw up all the schedules for everybody else, right? What you're learning here is there's a great deal of interconnectivity, whether you're the NFL or whether you're college football.
That's exactly right. And by the way, if you're a coach in the Big Ten and you test positive, you're in a CDC-oriented 10-day quarantine, but a player has to do 21 days. So make sense of that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's just absolute madness. Having said that, I am ecstatic that the Big Ten's going to be back. I'm even willing to sit and listen to you call a game. That's how ecstatic I am to have everybody playing in college football. And fingers crossed the Big Ten's going to be able to get it done, because I would like to see, but to be honest with you, I feel like Alabama, I feel like Clemson, I feel like Ohio State. We've almost got three that we feel pretty good about just in terms of overall talent. And maybe Georgia's that fourth. I'm not sure exactly, but I can't wait to find out.
I can't either. And you're the only guy in America that I wish wouldn't watch our show.
That is Joel Klatt. We will talk to him next week. Have a fantastic week, my man.
See you.